Hey guys, hope you've been having a great weekend. And you remember Concord, right? One of the biggest failures in gaming history. Yeah, that Concord. Well, the devs recently spoke out about what happened and stuff like the beta, the public reception. That's going to be fun to take a look at. The aftermath. And as you might expect, they are still as out of touch as ever. A lot of them are trying to blame gamers and saying things like, people just didn't give us a chance. And so these statements come from devs that were on the Time Well Wasted podcast, I think it's called, where they had some of these devs on. Of course, they spoke about this stuff. So now we've got some quotes that have been compiled over on Reset Era, and I also got some quotes from the YouTube channel Mystic. So let's start with this quote, where one of the devs says, "The audience our publisher was catering to did not want this game at all from the get-go. The game was labeled as uncool." And then they lament how people just didn't give the game a chance, saying stuff like, yeah, but you haven't even looked into it. You haven't even played it. It's like, yeah, well, like, why would anyone want to play this modern audience garbage? Seems like they're also trying to put all or a lot of the blame on the publisher. And I just don't buy that, because they say, like, the publisher forced us to make a game catering to this group of people, which seems to be implied to be about the modern audience, because the game itself was clearly catering to the modern audience. And the reason I don't fully buy that this was like only the publishers, because we've already seen that a number of the devs that worked on Concord from Firewalk Studios, the game dev company, well, a lot of these devs were a part of the modern audience, or I should say are a part of the modern audience. So they probably loved Concord, but now they're enacting this damage control like a year later because they don't want this like blank spot on their resume or whatever. Like, let's try and kind of rewrite history, try to save some face here. We can see more of that in this quote, where one of the devs says, "I mean, it's certainly unpleasant. It was incredibly frustrating that we didn't do any counter programming. You know, that started immediately after the reveal of the game. And then it was just total radio silence. So a lot of false narratives around the game got built, and it was outside of our control." False narratives, really? No, dude. People talked about the factual stuff that was going on in Concord. No one needed to like make up a false narrative. The game was awful for a lot of reasons that have been greatly discussed. Here's what they say about the beta. "We were excited locally in the studio, but the public had no idea what it was at first. I thought people were just harsh during the reveal trailer. I was like, you know what? There's things we need to work on, but it's okay. Once people touch the game, it's going to change things." And then the beta numbers dropped, and numbers were not what we were expecting. And I think our mindset started shifting to things could go really bad. Dude, if I recall, the beta had like, what, a peak player count around 1,400? I think. I'm going off memory. I'm going to check that. Okay, so it was actually 2,388, almost 2,400, which is obviously still beyond terrible. The devs continue talking about the beta, saying it made news for how poorly the beta did. Like, people would go out to news sites to, like, hear about our game and how negatively it was doing, instead of, like, hearing what the game was about. People heard about our game because of how poorly it did, but people didn't hear about what the game was, or even really tried. There was no shortage of news articles and YouTube videos and hate on the internet about how poor the numbers were, so it was pretty apparent. You gotta be kidding me. They're really trying to say that people didn't really know what the game was. Yeah, we did. What the frick? Dude, the cope is just crazy. From there, they talk about the reception. "The most frustrating part about it to me was people had made up their mind about the game, and I felt like it was based off, I mean, this is more our fault than theirs, but we did a bad job of communicating what we were trying to do. And I felt like there was such a disconnect. Like, if I could sit down with any individual that said something bad about the game and plead our case, I could convince them 100% to be on board with the game. It's just, we did a terrible job of appealing to the mass of gamers, and it didn't go too well." I guess I'll give this statement a little bit of credit for having like a tiny shred of accountability, at least compared to the other stuff that these devs were saying. But this is still very delusional, because bro is really trying to make it sound like the only issue with Concord was the communication. Like, we just didn't explain this well enough. No, dude, there were a lot of problems with the game, as I mentioned a moment ago. I'm just not going to list all the problems with the game, because like, we've covered that extensively, and so many people have done a great job covering that extensively already and talking about that stuff. So it seems far too redundant to just repeat all of that here. I'm sure everyone watching this video probably knows the numerous issues with Concord. So let's just keep going to the next statement. And this one returns to the very whiny style that we've been seeing. "It's just weird that there is this audience who's just constantly wanting to be excited that something fails. But the reality behind it is, we're just looking at our keyboards and then we're like, oh, no job today. There's like a schadenfreude of, I don't think I said that right, whatever. Oh, big game fails, and like, that's awesome. We got to see something crash and burn, and like, that's kind of great. That's really cool. And to be a part of that process, it's really easy to bandwagon on that. Like, well, we're punching up and not really take into consideration that, like, well, you're punching up at that, but then all these people that work really hard on it are not those people. Well, just because people worked on the game, obviously, doesn't mean that they're free from criticism. Like, if you make a bad product, people are allowed to talk about that. And that doesn't mean they're limited to only talking about the product itself. People are allowed to talk about the team that developed said product and ways that they could have done better and things that they did wrong. Here's what the devs have to say about working at Firewalk. I know I felt like I would run into battle and die for the company that day. I was ecstatic when the teaser was revealed. I miss it immensely. All this interviewing and talking to other companies, I want to bring my whole old team there. They always ask me, why did I like working at the studio so much? And it was like, I really just enjoyed the team, the people. That's what I miss. People were kind to each other. If someone had a bad day, people would be super supportive and be like, go ahead, take the time. If you're not feeling good, just go home. This is the first studio where I felt equal and treated right. Not only is everyone super talented, but also everyone was respectful and nice. It's a green flag when I can go into the women's bathroom and it's not only filled with feminine hygiene products, but also there's women there. And it's like, oh, I have to share a bathroom with other women now? Like, whoa, that's odd because you usually get the whole place to yourself. You know, what's really funny is how shortly after Concord released and we were in the news cycle of its massive failure, there were some people coming out saying that the Concord devs, Firewalk overall, that they have this culture of toxic positivity. Some sources I've spoken with blamed a head in the sand mentality carried over from the studio's Bungie roots. A sense the game would come together because the team was too good to fail. It seems like we're seeing more of that attitude displayed in the statement that we just read. We've got one last statement to take a look at here, and it's pretty funny. Something else funny too is how the user on Reset Era that posted these quotes went on to say about all of this. From all public accounts, it sounds like Firewalk was an incredible studio to work at, full of highly talented people, but marketing and management completely screwed it over. This team absolutely did not deserve to be treated the way they were. I really hope people listen to it. One last quote that I loved hearing as it shows how passionate this team was about the game they made. And we can see that quote right here. Travis from the art team responding to Ashley, who says, "Do you want people to know you worked on it?" And Travis says, "Yeah, and I want them to be surprised when I'm happy about it. That's what I want. We were proud, regardless of how it went. We put out a good game." I mean, this is truly astonishing. From the dev trying to act like they put out a good game here, just not even acting like it, saying that they put out a good game, which is just a crazy take and shows that these people have no accountability and they just don't seem like they'll ever grow as people, to the Reset Era user who's actually like buying into this nonsense and acting like, yeah, these people are so talented. They're so hardworking and talented. And they're trying to put all the blame on like marketing and management. What a freaking joke. No accountability from any of these people. And this is to be expected from all of these modern audience types. Just very, very typical. Something funny though is one of the comments on the first page of that thread says, "When you mess things up and blame marketing and management teams." And that person actually got a warning from the moderators. Probably one of the only comments in the entire thread that's actually talking sense, and the mods warned them. Of course, that is also typical. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed my coverage. I had fun making this video, despite how pathetic these statements were. It was certainly amusing and funny to take a look at. So, like I said, I hope you enjoyed. Consider sharing your thoughts in the comments. And as always, thank you so much for tuning in.